Hello everyone, this video will go through the story of Quantum Break. On October 9, 2016, Jack Joyce returns home to Riverport after 6 years' absence, at the request of his childhood friend Paul Serene, head of Monarch Solutions, after Paul asks for help regarding a life-changing project. Making their way to the Project Promenade lab, Paul revealed what his project is, until Jack eventually deduces that Paul's team built a time machine. Paul explained that he wanted Jack to help him activate the machine and prove its functionality to prove William Joyce, Jack's brother, wrong. Prior to his contacting Jack, William saw to it that the financial backers of the project bowed out after he claimed to discover malfunctions within the machine's design. Jack agrees and witnesses firsthand the time machine's power when another Paul emerges from the machine. When the present day Paul prepares to travel through the machine, William appears and demands that Jack shut down the machine. When Jack refuses, William tries in vain to avert the disaster himself when the core malfunctions. He fails and the core sends out an explosion of chrono energy that renders Jack unconscious. When Jack comes to, everything is frozen in suspended animation. He finds William in the same state and manages to free him. When a stutter collapses, the lab is besieged by Monarch security, which forces Jack and William to flee while Paul has no choice to use the machine to escape. Using the maintenance tunnels, Jack and William evade Monarch security. William tries to explain that because of what happened in the lab, time was broken and beginning to break down. If a solution wasn't found soon, the end of time would occur and everyone on the planet would be caught in a permanent zero state. He created a countermeasure that could mend fracture and avert the end of time. William is eventually caught by Monarch security and taken to the Riverport library when Jack is separated from his brother. Jack meets Bess Wilder, who informs him of his brother's location. Though Jack is able to reach his brother and rescue him from Monarch security, their escape is halted by the reappearance of an aged Paul who attacks them. Paul kills William and Jack is taken prisoner by Monarch security leader Lynn Burke. When Jack regains consciousness, he escapes during a stutter, taking a frozen Bess Wilder and Lynn Burke's weapon from them. Traveling through the industrial area, Jack fights his way to the dry dock to get to Paul. He catches Paul departing in a helicopter with Dr. Sophia Amara. Jack attempts to kill Paul, but fails. Paul uses his chronon abilities to create a wreck within a partially constructed ship to track Jack. Jack narrowly escapes the destruction and reunites with Bess at the top of the dry docks. He decides to work with Bess to stop the fracture, and Bess explains that she's been working to prepare for the day of the fracture for most of her life. They discover the original time machine William built, but find the countermeasure is missing. When they try to use the time machine, it fails to work. With no options, Jack decides to head for Gull Island to kidnap Monarch top scientist Dr. Emerald, but his plan is predicted by Paul. Once on the island, Jack surrenders himself to Paul and Martin Hatch, CEO of Monarch. A short time afterwards, Beth returns to her undercover status to break Jack out. They two go on to search Dr. Emerald and learn that she was at the gala. They eventually find her in a stutter, where she is about to be killed by John smashing through the window of the mansion. Realizing that Dr. Emerald has been kidnapped, Paul's Chrono Syndrome begins to act up, and he attacks Hatch, blaming him for what happened. Elsewhere, Jack is separated from Beth and Dr. Emerald when he arrives at Port Donnelly Bridge, but is discovered by Monarch security. As he attempts to cross the bridge, he is caught in a shipwreck that destroyed the bridge, but survives on account of a stutter. With Dr. Emerald as their hostage, Jack and Beth demand that she help them fix the villain's time machine so that they could travel into the past to retrieve the countermeasure. As they restore the power to time machine, Beth and Jack discover a mural of an 8-year-old Beth meeting her adult self from the future. Beth realizes that because she met herself as a child in 1999, the past is set and cannot be changed. Jack, who was determined to try and change events by returning to creation point of the fracture, reluctantly agrees to do things Beth's way and go to July 4th, 2010 instead. Beth gets ahead of him and steps into the clockwise path of the time machine and is trapped inside when Dr. Emerald resets the time machine for the future at the last second. Knowing that he can't get to Beth, Jack decides to go through with the original plan and travel to July 4th, 2010. Once he's there, he reunites with a traumatized Beth. Beth explained that Dr. Emerald set her to the end of time and that she attempted to kill Paul when she was there. The two head for William's workshop in the industrial area and found a countermeasure in an electronical sealed room inside a safe. Paul attempts to convince Beth to join him and surrender the countermeasure. When she refused and tried to kill him, Paul shot her in the shoulder and sends the countermeasure flying from her hand. The countermeasure releases a charge of chrono energy that creates a ground zero. The blast sends Jack back to the year 2016, and he witnesses Beth's death in a time echo. Furious, Jack left the industrial area, intent on avenging Beth's death and taking back the countermeasure. Time begins to collapse at a much faster rate as Jack approaches Monarch headquarters, with everything around him moving out of sync and order. Once inside the post office, Jack heads for the CFR chamber, where he encounters and fights Lynn Burke. He retrieves the countermeasure and uses the time machine to travel back to October 9th to save his brother. Arriving moments after the fracture in time occurs, Jack remains one step behind his past self. He arrives at the Riverport Library at the exact moment he believes his brother died and prevents William's death. After rescuing William, Jack is convinced by his brother to return to his present and use the countermeasure there to mend the fracture. William and Jack return to the Bradbury swimming hall and set the time machine for Jack's present. Arriving back to October the 10th, William is trapped in a stutter upon exiting the machine, and Jack is attacked by Monarch security and Paul. Jack defeats the security and kills Paul with a punch, which makes his neck broken. Then Jack and his brother reactivate the countermeasure, which successfully rejuvenates the Maya-Joyce field and stabilizes the fracture. However, Jack begins to experience symptoms of Chrono Syndrome after seeing a vision of himself at the end of time.